The old Blackwood house loomed over the town, its silhouette a jagged shadow against the moonlit sky, a silent warning to anyone who dared to come close. Its windows, shattered and empty, stared out like vacant eyes, watching the world with a cold, unblinking gaze. Everyone in town whispered that it was cursed, alive in its own way, and brimming with secrets that no one wanted to uncover. Peter, always the first to accept a challenge, stood at the edge of the tangled, overgrown yard, his breath catching in his throat. Tom and Sarah's voices echoed in his mind, their dare ringing louder than the wind rustling through the weeds. He crept forward, the tall grass and weeds clutching at his ankles like ghostly fingers, each step heavier than the last. The air grew colder with every step, a damp chill seeping through his jacket and making him shiver despite himself. The house seemed to watch him, its presence pressing down, as if it was waiting for him to make a move. The porch groaned under his weight, the sound echoing in the stillness. He reached the door, heart thumping in his chest. The iron knocker was icy beneath his hand, sending a jolt up his arm, as if the house itself was warning him to stay away. He didn't knock. He was sneaking in, determined not to let his friends think he was scared. The heavy oak door creaked open, darkness spilling out like a living thing, swallowing the last bit of daylight. Peter hesitated, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure it could be heard outside, his hand trembling on the doorknob. But the thought of backing down, of facing Tom and Sarah's laughter, was worse than any ghost or shadow lurking inside. He took a deep breath and stepped inside, leaving the grey afternoon and the safety of the outside world behind him. The air was thick, musty, and full of old secrets, dust motes swirling in the faint shafts of light that managed to slip through the cracks. Shadows swallowed him as he crossed the threshold, the darkness pressing in from all sides, making him feel small and alone. The world outside faded away, replaced by the creaks and sighs of the old house. He was in. The dare had truly begun. Every instinct screamed at him to turn and run, to escape the darkness, but he pressed on, forcing his feet to move. He thought of Tom's taunt, Sarah's doubt, and the way their eyes had sparkled with mischief as they dared him. He couldn't turn back now, not with their voices echoing in his mind and the challenge hanging in the air. He was Peter, the brave one, the one who never said no to a dare, no matter how frightening. The house seemed to sigh, its old bones creaking as if it recognized him, as if it had been waiting for someone like him to arrive. And so, with a final glance over his shoulder, Peter stepped deeper into the darkness. The adventure had started, and there was no turning back. Peter entered a grand foyer, dust swirling in a single shaft of light. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. Each step he took echoed faintly, as if the house itself was listening. A massive staircase vanished into shadow, cobwebs draping a chandelier overhead. The grandeur of the place was undeniable, but it felt abandoned by time, left to gather secrets in the dark. He moved silently, the silence pressing in, broken only by the soft creak of the floorboards beneath his feet. Every sound seemed magnified, swallowed by the vast emptiness. "Hello?" he called, but only silence answered. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting. He slipped into a library, books scattered, fireplace cold, dust thick. The room felt untouched for decades, as if the world outside had simply forgotten it existed. It felt like trespassing in a tomb. The silence was oppressive, and the air unmoving. 5 minutes must be up, he thought, ready to leave. He glanced at his watch, heart pounding, eager for the relief of fresh air. But the door led not to the foyer, but a narrow hallway lined with stern portraits. Their painted eyes seemed to follow him, judging, unblinking. Panic rose. He spun back, but the library remained. The familiar path had vanished, replaced by confusion. Forward again, a strange hallway, not the way he came. The walls seemed to close in, the lights flickering as if uncertain. He tried to retrace his steps, but every door led somewhere new. A dining room set for a party long gone, another hallway, another dead end. The house was a labyrinth, shifting with every turn. Dread settled in his stomach. The realization crept in that he was no longer in control. He tried door after door, each one a new maze. The house seemed to twist and rearrange itself, mocking his every attempt to escape. Then, somewhere behind him, the front door slammed shut. The sound was final, a warning and a sentence. The echo rang through the house. He was trapped, the walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The house had changed the rules. It was no longer just a building, but a living puzzle. There was no going back. Every exit was gone, every familiar room replaced by something new and strange. The adventure had become something else. The house was alive, its intentions unknowable, its corridors endless, and it wanted him to stay. The realization chilled him to the bone as the house seemed to settle in around its newest guest. The slamming door was a sentence. Peter was trapped. He ran, but the room shifted, a parlor of ghostly furniture, a hallway that twisted and changed. The house was a living maze, walls moving when he wasn't looking. He pressed his ear to the wall, strange scuttling, a low groan, the sound of the house breathing. Fear sharpened. He was inside a monster. He had to keep moving, searching for any escape. Portraits sneered as he passed, their eyes following. The floor tilted, sending him sliding into a nursery. A rocking horse grinned. A music box played a warped lullaby. The tune was a warning, not a comfort. The house was feeding on his fear. He realized he had to outsmart it, not just survive. He steadied himself, determined. The house wanted him scared. He wouldn't give in. He had to be brave. He had to find a way out. The monster was clever, but so was he. The game was on. The lullaby followed Peter as he fled, the air growing colder. Whispers slithered from the walls, at first faint, then louder. His name, drawn out and chilling. He tried to block them out, but they wormed into his mind. He stumbled into a ballroom, moonlight catching dust in the air. A grand piano crashed out discordant notes, keys moving on their own. The music was chaos, the whispers swirling, hissing. We've been waiting, so lonely. Peter's fear spiked, but he spotted double doors across the room. He ran, the laughter of the whispers chasing him. He burst through the doors into darkness, desperate to escape the noise. The house was relentless, but he kept moving. He wouldn't let it win. The whispers faded behind him. He pressed on, searching for hope. The house's tricks were growing desperate. He was getting closer to the truth. Peter entered a circular room lined with hundreds of mirrors. Every reflection showed a different version of himself. Scared, angry, grinning, crying. The effect was dizzying, overwhelming. He felt trapped, watched by 1,000 eyes. His own. The reflections began to change, twisting into nightmares. He squeezed his eyes shut, but the feeling of being watched remained. The house was using his own fear against him. He forced himself to focus. This was another trick, another puzzle. He moved along the wall, tapping each mirror. Most were solid, cold glass. Then his hand passed through one. An illusion. A hidden door. Without hesitation, he stepped through. The house's illusions were clever, but he was learning. He wouldn't be fooled by his own fear. He pressed forward, determined. The house was running out of tricks. He was getting closer to the heart of the mystery. The mirrors faded behind him. He was one step closer to escape. The end was in sight. Peter landed on a plush red carpet in yet another hallway. Gas lamps flickered, shadows dancing on peeling wallpaper. He walked, doors lining the hall, each one locked. The hallway stretched endlessly, the end always out of reach. Frustration boiled over. He shouted, but only the lamps flickered in reply. He ran, but the hallway stretched with him, a cruel trick. Exhausted, he collapsed, staring at the ceiling. Then he saw it, a small brass key on the carpet, almost hidden. He picked it up, hope flickering. A key meant a lock, and a lock meant a door. The house was testing him, but he was ready. He searched for the right door, heart pounding. The endless hallway was just another illusion. He wouldn't give up. The key was his way out. He pressed on, determined to solve the puzzle. The house was nearly beaten. The key led Peter to a single ornate door, its carvings swirling with secrets and age-old stories. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to step forward. With trembling hands, he unlocked it, heart pounding in his chest, and entered a small circular room that felt both ancient and alive. In the center of the chamber, suspended in the gloom, floated a glowing blue heart, pulsing with a strange, mesmerizing light that seemed to call out to him. The house's heartbeat echoed through the trembling walls, a deep, rhythmic thrum that made the floor shiver beneath his feet. Whispers filled the room, swirling around him like a cold wind. But now, instead of menace, they carried a deep, aching sadness, as if the house itself was mourning. In that moment, Peter understood. The house wasn't evil at all. It was simply lonely, twisted and warped by years of isolation and forgotten memories. The spirit trapped inside just longed for company, for someone to listen. But its endless sorrow had become a curse that haunted every corner. Instead of fear, Peter felt a wave of pity and compassion for the house and its lonely heart. He knew deep down what he had to do. He couldn't turn away now, not when he finally understood the truth. The only way out, the only way to bring peace was to set the house free from its pain. He reached for the heart, his resolve hardening, determined to end the suffering that had lasted for so long. The house trembled violently, as if it sensed what was about to happen, every board and beam quivering with anticipation. Peter was scared, more scared than he'd ever been, but he pressed on, refusing to let fear stop him now. The heart pulsed brighter and brighter, the whispers rising in a desperate plea for release, swirling around him in a storm of voices. Peter's courage was the key, the one thing the house had needed all along. He was ready to break the curse, to bring light back into the darkness. The house's fate and the spirits rested entirely in his hands now. He reached out, hope and fear mingling in his eyes, ready to do what must be done. The final test had come, and Peter would not turn away. Peter's hand touched the glowing heart. Energy surged through him. The whispers swirled, begging him to stay, but he stood firm. Images flooded his mind. A lonely girl, her sorrow binding the house. He whispered, "You're not alone. You can be free." Warmth spread from his touch, the blue heart turning gold. The whispers softened, a sigh of relief filling the room. Light blazed, the house trembling, not in anger, but in release. The heart vanished, the curse lifting. The door opened to the grand foyer, sunlight streaming in. The house was at peace. Peter stepped into the light, free at last. The adventure was over. He had faced his fear, and won. The lonely spirit was gone. The house was just a house again. Peter had broken the curse, and he would never forget. Peter ran from the house, sunlight warm on his face. He found Tom and Sarah waiting, worry etched on their faces. "You were in there for hours," Sarah cried. "Are you okay?" Tom asked. Peter smiled, changed by what he'd faced. He told them it was just an old spooky house. He let them think he'd won the dare, but he knew the truth. He'd faced a living nightmare and set a spirit free. He kept the real story to himself. The house on the hill was just a house now, its windows empty, its secrets gone. Peter felt older, braver, wiser. The whispers were gone, the curse broken. He had a secret adventure no one would ever believe, and he wouldn't trade it for anything. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is show a little kindness, even to a haunted house.